It doesn't come alive until you wear it. So you are the ultimate maker of the fragrance because it is you who brings it to the world. It is you that presents the story of it.
The fragrance, I'm just thinking about this now. Amazing. The fragrance does not exist unless someone wears it. Wow.
No, it's going to be just a beautiful fragrance in the bottle.
In a bottle, yeah. Lev, you mentioned that fragrance was your first love. I know there's a really beautiful story there about your mom buying a fragrance for herself. Would you mind sharing that story with us, please?
So I was born in Russia. I was there until I was 10 years old. And I remember when I was 6 years old, my mother took me to a black market at the time, back in 1960s. The Russia that we lived in, that at the time was an iron curtain. Nothing would be penetrating through the walls of Russia. So everything that is not produced in Russia would be smuggled into the country. And the only two fragrances that existed on the market were Red Moscow, one for men, one for women.
Yeah,
it smelled pretty horrible. And what's really horrible about it is that everybody smelled the same. The man would be wearing their version, and the woman would be wearing their version.
Yeah.
But since those are the only two fragrances were available, everybody smelled the same. And I was always very sensitive to smell. And I remember when my mother took me to the black market, and there's a smuggler who was bringing fragrances from France. A lot of women would be saving money for months and months and months for that particular moment.
Wow.
I remember when I was standing there and my mother finally grabbed the fragrance in this mayhem. Late October in St. Petersburg is damp, it's cold. It was Saturday. I was with my house slippers, a coat. My mom had her rollers in her hair because we were just notified. The market came up. You got to run. You got to do it because they fold in an hour. Come in and out, and they're gone because it's a crime to buy from somebody things that were smuggled into the country at the time. But I remember when she finally got the fragrance, and she paid the smuggler, whose sort of like secret name was Antoine, and it was not his name. But she counted the money. It was 120 rubles. 120 rubles was equivalent to 1 month's rent. Wow. 1 month's salary.
Yeah, wow.
Because we were paying for our room 22 rubles a month. She couldn't get rid of the money fast enough because she wanted the bottle of this fragrance. And I remember when she took me aside and she sort of like that feverishly opened this box.
Wow.
And she applied it on her skin. Everything transformed. I mean, this is where the seed was planted in my soul.
Wow.
Because I didn't know that the fragrance had such a profound effect.
Being that young, it was like a new experience for you to witness that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's like, because the person in front of me just transformed.
Yeah.
Us looking that ridiculous with me sort of like looking the way I looked. My mom
and rollers.
All of it just melted away. And I smelled this incredible smell that I never smelled before. And that changed my life forever.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, there's nothing cuts through a dreary world. There's something that comes from somewhere else.
And can transport all the dreariness away just by that single spray.
Yeah.
I think when you have single experiences like that when you're young, because you're not living among the excess, because I mean, that's the part of things, you know, and people don't have, you know, the immediate things they need. You have to stand on line for like essentials. She couldn't have saved the money. She borrowed the money so she would be paying it back, which is worse, right? It's harder.
So in order to be anything different, you had to sacrifice and save. And it's such a powerful thing that your mother would do that just to to make herself feel somewhere else.
Well, and it's also showed that there was so much out there.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
When we had so little.
Yeah.
And you understood that it opened the world, that in my head it became clear that
so
that's not where it starts and ends.
That transformation for you was one moment you're like, this all exists in the world.
Yeah.
The next moment, like, oh, there's a much bigger scent world that I never knew existed.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's applied to everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't just it became a symbolic thing for me. That's why that experience was so big. It wasn't just the fragrance. I started thinking there's a whole world out there of things that we don't even aware of.
Yeah.
And so that's why it became so symbolic for me. But it's also I love fragrances and I'm sensitive to smells. And the scent has always became part of my life story, and different chapters of my life.
Yes.
Fragrances represented something.
For sure. But we are at the Maker Hotel in Hudson, New York. Lev and Alina. I know this place is a manifestation of your dreams and a creative vision, and that if you took almost a decade to create this extraordinary experience, help me set the scene. How would you describe the deep immersion setting that we're in right now?
Well, the Maker is a hotel in Hudson, New York, upstate. It's really juxtaposition of a dream that started, I think, that before it was even a dream. You know, as Lev and I founded Fresh, and it's a beauty company, and we got a chance to travel a lot around the world and stayed in a lot of hotels. And I think the one repeating thought has always been, you know, why is everything so much a cookie cutter, so the same? You know, why is it, you know, even though when you're looking for a great hotel, you want to have a great bed and a really lovely bathroom, but there's something else that you expect, especially when you're traveling through places very fast and you don't have an opportunity to really understand the place and location and people. And that you tend to get when you stay with friends, you know, when you have an experience of somebody that is a little bit more personal. And I think that maybe that was sort of the birth of a dream before it even became something that's literal.
That personal aspect?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and we're always seeking properties that were more curated, not necessarily large.
Yeah.
They felt intimate, but they felt very different.
So say I'm a stranger walking through the door of the Maker. How would you describe the experience of opening the door for the first time and going from room to room till we get to this room? Walk us through that visual experience.
Well, I mean, first of all, when you walk in, again, the moment that the door closes behind you, you feel like you're in another world. You can't really pinpoint sometimes which era it is. You've probably seen it somewhere in your travels or in Europe, but it immediately sort of like envelopes you and takes you somewhere else. When you walk into the main building, which is the brick building, it's a Georgian building, was built in 1897.
Amazing.
And you sort of immediately sort of like capturing the space, but in a way where on the right-hand side you have the salon, and on the left side you have the library. So you immediately feel you're very, very engaged.
Yes.
And there's this beautiful long hallway that leads you right into conservatory where the restaurant is, and as you're standing at the door, you see this conservatory with all these plants. It almost feels like orangery. It's so beautiful. So you feel like you drawn right into the space and you just want to keep on going. And I see how people experience it when they walk into the space for the first time. They look to the right, they look to the left. They immediately sort of like taking the path, and walking right towards the conservatory, and when the conservatory opens up with all this glass and all these plants, it's so beautiful. You always hear like, wow. People like always like saying the word wow. And then they walk right through this corridor, which is very, very intimate, which leads you right to where we're sitting here, which is the carriage house. And when that opens to their vision, they completely they so surprised.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting it either.
They can't even. It's so unexpected for them.
Yeah, I'll go
because
back
of
to
the height and
Willy Wonka thing when he opens the room to the chocolate factory.
Yeah,
I walk down this hall. I'm like, I don't know what's behind this door.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow.
It's always that sort of like response that is so familiar to me every time we walk with people here. And when we were designing the spaces, I mean, this was very much in our minds. It is to be able to create spaces that wasn't just about the wow. It's more about you just want to inspire.
Yeah.
You just want people to think. I mean, I think I've seen something of this. I don't know where, but it still feels so different than anything else. Yeah. So it takes you immediately on a more emotional journey. I mean, we're both. I mean, because we're born in Russia, and you know, Russians are very emotional in a certain way, and I mean, everybody's emotional. Yeah, but we'll all sort of like express it in different ways.
Absolutely.
We wanted to have a theater, a little bit of a drama, but it's positive. In a way where it creates, again, the moment you have an emotional response to something, you experiencing things very, very differently.
Yeah, drama is a great word for some of the emotion I was feeling walking in.
And that's really part of it, because it's like it's like a movie set in some ways. When you create public spaces, you create a theater to a certain degree. Yeah. This is not necessarily something you might create in your own home. Yeah. But you really want to take people on the journey where they can dream.
Absolutely.
And that's I think was translated very successfully. Not because we did it. It's because how it's landed. We put so much emotion and passion into every single detail of each one of the rooms. If it's a piece of molding and the relation of the molding to the baseboard, to the bookcases, to the space itself, seeing that in the end and what it does to people when they come here, it's extremely gratifying.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was going to ask you, if you've had a partnership for the last 30 years and you've been traveling all your lives, 30 years together, when did that realization come to say, we need to do something of our own? When did that start to happen?
Well, I think that we were in Italy on Lake Garda. I think it was in 2002 or 2003. Yeah. Somewhere around the time, right? And it was right around the time when we partnered with LVMH, and they became great partners to us in terms of fresh and developing fresh and making it into a global brand. It sort of like gives us an opportunity to start dreaming about other things. And I remember we were on Lake Garden. We stayed at this incredible property. We took 2 of our daughters with us, and it was just magical. We were there for a week, and it's for the first time we experienced a property that was truly curated. A property. It's been an old house. It's maybe the house is 200 years old.
Oh, wow.
And they brought back to life and uncovered every single detail in the house, and brought all this original beauty back to life, and it felt that it was just always there. And I think that's when the seed.
Oh wow, that was
we're
the inspiration.
Sitting around the pool, and we just couldn't think about anything else.
Is that one of those moments where you're like, why can't we do something like this? Is that really the thought in your head?
I don't think that happens so fast. I think that just like any seed, it needs time to sort of germinate. It needs time to actually even become the kind of seed that actually speaks of it in relation to yourself. It's like, what an amazing hotel. One day you want to open something. I think the big part of what was special about Villa Feltrinelli, this is what it was called, and this is something that we've always want to capture at the Maker, is that while this was a hotel, you did not feel like you were staying in a hotel. You felt like you were, you got a chance to stay with friends at this amazing place, but they're not there. So they are very, interesting and exotic and tasteful and lovely and luxurious, but they're not there. So you really have control of that. I think we as like people who are rushing and always going somewhere, when we have that moment that we are free, or we have this escape, I think that the image of that is that I can control my own experience and I could be somewhere where I really can explore and have that element of surprise, that delight and surprise that happens when you see something unexpected and you don't have to ask permission to look at it.
Yes. When we were chatting earlier, I was talking to you about entering this room and I did gasp. Like that was a natural reaction to being in the space, the hyacinths, the wood, the lamps, the curtains, every detail. When you say it doesn't feel like a hotel, I love that because it doesn't also even feel like a friend's house. It just feels like another world. Like this is like the thought in my mind was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Like you go someplace very special that's unique and doesn't exist anywhere else. So it doesn't feel like a hotel or a house. It just feels like a special built experience, and it kind of feels just for me because this aesthetic really speaks to me. So it feels singular that way.
Well, that's sort of like the idea is that when you walk into these spaces, you leave everything behind, including all your inhibitions. And just sort of like be yourself, feel liberated, and do whatever you want.
For sure.
Enjoy the environment. It's very sultry.
Alina, when we talk about those little pieces of attention to detail, you and I were talking earlier about, I was pointing out the lighting and the wallpaper, and you both said, well, we've done, like every single touch is done by us. Can you talk me through some of the details in the spaces when we walk through that are your favorites that you've done?
We call the Maker style Bohemian sensibility. And, as the advantage of being Bohemian is it's really blend of periods and textures. I mean, Bohemians had a free spirit. So it was an idea of picking things and items from different centuries, from different styles, and really blending them in our own way. So while, we know somewhat enough information about each of those periods, we were not guided by the strict, parameters of that, and to really bring things together in our own way. That's what creates that sort of a flow feel and feel like familiar, but not necessarily I've been here. I think that's really important. And of course, color has a lot to do with that. I mean, we've developed a palette for the Maker from the beginning. It was going to be something that was rich and textured, jewel tones, but somewhat aged, and of course, the fact that over 75% of furnishings in the hotel have been restored from vintage pieces is something that contributes to it. The lighting, the effect of, Lev's approach to professorship of lighting, it's sort of, there's always going to be light everywhere. And of course, it's a very different sense of a light because the light lights a space, it lights life. So it's very different, it's very forgiving, and it's very kind. And that's part of what adds to the color palette as well. 100%. So I think that, the one thing about the space we're sitting in now, the Maker Lounge, it's truly, this was the first public space that was actually opened. We opened it.
Oh, wow.
A year and a half before the hotel was open because it's a freestanding building. Of course, we've connected it to the rest of the spaces. But this truly describes, it kind of shows a full Maker sensibility. This was a carriage house. There were stables. So the original beadboard that you see on the walls, we had to strip it down, restore it, put insulation behind the walls, put the bead back up. I mean, you see the Parisian street lights. You have these pendants above the bar that we've created, and thinking about, what light would really be very flattering for people gathering around the bar. The bar is not square. It's sort of semi-round. So it's a wonderful thing that you're sitting on one side of the bar and seeing somebody else. The chairs, even though we've designed them, we've developed them, they're not old. But I think having some of that, what was really comfortable about the bar is that you don't want to be jumping off that stool too fast because, the cocktail mixologist at the maker is really talented. So we want people to really be able to enjoy sitting. There are certain shapes and colors. You see a lot of velvets, you see a lot of textured wools. And of course, the dynamic of everything considered together, living together in a way that you may not think it works, but all of it, we think do.
I agree 100%.
Benny, talking about lighting, I'm obsessed with lighting. I'm obsessed with furniture.
Yeah, I can see that.
And
you've done a very good job.
And in interiors, it was always a passion for both of us. Lighting it's sort of it's like a jewelry. It's no space is completed without a perfect lighting.
Yeah,
and it's not just enough for the lighting to look good. It's also have to shine well, because when people are sitting in the public spaces, they want to look good.
100%. Yeah,
they want to make sure that they look attractive. And I love that sort of developing that whole ambient that the light completes. If you take all the lighting out of here right now, yes, it would be a nice space, but this is, to me, it's sort of like the vein that the blood that runs through the veins.
Yes.
Of the space, and a lot of times you could be in some spaces which are very, very beautiful, and there's not enough emphasis on the light, and I think it just takes away from the magic. And this is it's a functional art. That's how I see it. The lighting in the end of the day, and how it's being sort of like the value of the lighting, how it's being managed, which everything have to be on dimmers, everything have to be programmed, because every light, it's sort of like, it's like a symphony. It's got to be brighter in one area, it's got to be darker in the other. It's the whole process, and I actually realized it when we were working on it here, that how the space absorbs light. And when we finish the space and the lighting finally comes in, this is my most favorite time of the project.
Your baby. When
the lighting is here, it means everything is clean, everything is done, the furniture is here, and the lighting is being hung last. It's like magic.
Yeah.
it's like magic. It's the final sort of like piece that you put on the painting, and you say, okay, I think it's done.
I like to spend a moment thinking about how all these little pieces and attention to detail, how do these translate into the fragrances that you make, right? All these things that we're touching and feeling and seeing, how do you translate those emotions to fragrances?
I think that, because there was one thing I want to say is that, because I know Lev for over 30 years. And the one thing that, I think I found out about him very quickly after we met is his incredible passion for fragrance. In fact, he gifted me a fragrance after we knew each other for, a few days.
Oh, that's nice.
And as a friend, and I have to tell you that was
I want one now too.
Well, there's a lot more opportunities, and obviously because that wasn't his fragrance at the time. But I think the part that so suited me that I don't think that I've ever had a fragrance that really I liked so much for myself. And the idea of being able to read a person's aura to understand what smells really good.
Even
to
this day, really the one that he gifted you is one of your favorites.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, my favorite fragrance is the one that he's made.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
I mean, this is the fortunate thing about living besides Lev is the fact that, I have been wearing his fragrances all my life pretty much at this point, and I don't intend to change. So I don't have to, But I think this is the part of, understanding, he has an understanding of the scent world and how that lives within a person's aura in their life. And I think, being obviously that, after being in Fresh for 30 years and enjoying his talent in product development and fragrance. I think when the hotel was being opened and the spaces were being created from the beginning, he was already thinking about how do we express this in fragrance. And I was as excited about this because to me, that is the kind of product that is extremely romantic and sensual. And what better than fragrance can take you to a place of your fantasy?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I would say that the design, as Alina said, of the spaces and so like as all of it was developed personally in my head, fragrance was always connected to that. The language of fragrance was always there.
So you already knew or were planning.
Yes, completely.
Amazing.
I had already the fragrances in my head. Not that I would have a full formulation of the fragrance, but I would have the character of the fragrance. So as this space was built, I knew what the fragrance have to be like here.
Yeah.
Of course, because if you have a fireplace in here and you have all this amazing liquor and there'll be like this incredible artisanal type of cocktails that's going to be made here. As I would be closing my eyes and then opening them very, very quickly, I could see the room full of people and I could see sort of like these couples of all kinds.
Yeah.
They sitting and they have like this very intimate connection in the moment. They enjoying their cocktail. They enjoying each other. They could smell each other without even being aware of it, but it just comes their way. There is some kind of an intimacy that's happening here in that space, and that's how I imagine it. That's how I fantasize it in my head, and this is how I started seeing the fragrance that we're calling fire. Is very much was based on, it's not just because there's a fireplace here, but it's also how people put each other on fire.
Yeah.
And what it means.
Yeah.
And that's was driving, as an example of that particular fragrance, the story of that fragrance, of that couple that's experiencing the space.
It's beautiful.
And the music that they experience and how they experience each other and what they feel that's in the air. What does that actually smell like?
Full-blooded sensation.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
That spark.
And that is something that people can take away with them. It's the memory, which I think is very, very important. Every place that I've been with, I could take a visual memory, but it's not enough for me.
No.
I need to take something else that I could smelling is really an incredible reminder of that. But it goes to people, when people get connected to each other and they're connected to each other intimately, they remember each other by their smell.
For sure.
And it could be very subliminal.
We were talking about patchouli earlier in the day, and for me, my brain goes back to 1991 when a Bohemian woman said, "You're going to love this. You should start wearing it." I mean, it's been, 30 years since I've seen her. But whenever I put patchouli on, I think of her. And we just worked together for 2 months.
Right.
But she's forever in my memory because she introduced me to patchouli oil for the first time.
Because nothing but that olfactory sensation becomes something like coming home. When you smell something that's so familiar, or it takes you to a place that is.
Yes.
I think the ultimate aspect of generally, when people create fragrances, they think of destinations and, imagination. The idea of creating a destination from which all of it can spark and then it can just go away from here into, all around was extremely compelling.
Yeah.
And we started the Maker as a hotel, as a place of incredible hospitality and experience, but we always knew from the beginning that we wanted this to be beyond the hotel, a lifestyle brand that has aspects and details in this hotel could be taken home with someone or received as an idea. And fragrances is of course, is the most easiest to understand because it's most direct hit. It's something that you immediately feel and smell. And I think
it's a big undertaking. So if I understand it correctly, you're thinking about the hotel and the experience in building this. And Lev, you're saying you knew right away that you also wanted to create fragrances. Totally. Both of those things, building fragrance collection and a fragrance brand and a hotel, big undertakings. Did that feel overwhelming to you at any point?
No, I mean, I think that for me, it satisfied my own personal emotional journey because I feel like with the maker, I had the opportunity to really experience things 360 in so many different ways. Because at Fresh, I would be developing products and also fragrances. It was also a lifestyle brand within the beauty. But here, you actually created an environment that can support your stories, can support your sort of like the sensuality of the fragrance, and could bring it to life in a very, very different way.
Yeah.
It's not a fantasy anymore. It actually exists.
And how long did that take for you to develop each of the fragrances?
As I was developing everything else.
Same time,
Yeah.
wow.
It's as we're developing, I remember when I was standing in the Artist, which is our most popular room. It's almost impossible to book it. It's probably the most bohemian room in the space, in the space of the maker. It's sort of like it's very inspiring for people, and people feel it's romantic. It's very, very sensual. And the idea of the way I wanted to celebrate. We wanted to celebrate the maker of the Artist is really celebrating the. If I would be the artist, how would my personal space would look like? And it's my own interpretation.
Yeah.
I'm not an artist, but it's my own personal interpretation. It's sort of like, how would I dream about that space to be?
Well, I think you are an artist. If I look around and see everything that you two have created, I mean, that's an art form.
Thank you. So standing in this room, it felt very, very sensual, and the fragrance that I was starting to dream about in my head very much became interpretation of that space.
Beautiful.
And the type of fragrance we created that was inspired by that, called Naked. And it smells almost like a second skin. It's very, very sensual. And it's about the couple that really had some intimacy happening in this room, and it was probably in my head being a little bit romantic to a certain degree,
for sure.
and imagining things in a certain way.
Yeah.
It probably was one of the most amazing experience for them, being in that space and experiencing each other. And maybe it could be the couple that been in the lounge and put each other on fire, and all of it continued in that incredible room.
I love that you're creating sense based on a story that you're imagining in your head based on the space. There's so many layers there,
Yeah, because we all experience those things in some ways.
Yeah.
Maybe not the way I describe it, but we did.
Yeah.
And we had those moments in our lives, and if somebody still didn't, they will have it. And when they're going to have it, it's going to be pretty incredible. So I think that these are the type of moments that I had with the spaces, and in each room, I had to imagine it let's be a certain way.
Let's pause there and talk about the rooms. I think there are 11 rooms total in the space.
Yeah.
Alina, tell us about the maker rooms. I think Lev mentioned the artists. What are the other three?
Well, the makers, we call them the maker studios. And those are truly, the spaces that celebrate particular makers. And we've selected four for this hotel, one of them being, of course, the artist, the architect, the writer, and the gardener. And again, as I said, in the Bohemian sensibility response sense, it's our own imagination. It's a feeling as to what that room would represent had that maker lived in it. Whether the architect is very much inspired by the monochromatic, sophisticated design of the 40s. It's sort of that kind of architect with the beautiful mid-century bookcase and, black marble fireplace that is actually built in a very architectural way. Certain details are definitely much more sort of a sobering color palette than probably the most monochromatic room we have. But then when you go into the writer, that happens to be part of that space actually was a room that had a really old bookshelves in this original building that we were able to restore and bring back. It has a sort of sprawling fireplace, all, decorated with sort of inlays and wooden sculpting and carvings. And, it's a wonderful room suite, and we've of course decorated with the vintage typewriter and comfortable chairs, these wingback chairs in front of the fireplace that ideally would inspire you to write.
Yeah.
But also in that space, the bed looks like a wingback chair itself. I mean, it's an old upholstered leather, actually reclaimed leather. And you really feel like so cozy as you are sitting in a chair. I mean, the bedding is a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
The gardener was kind of inspired by the English gardens, of the latter 18th century. So the palette is very warm, a lot of sort of reds and oranges and greens. I mean, all the surfaces are very soft, but then the details, this is the one space that has one of our beds that we designed, and it's actually a metal bed. So there's a lot of wrought iron details in that room, vintage wrought iron chandelier. This also has one of my favorite details in the whole hotel is that we've created a gate that separates the bathtub area, bathroom, from the main room. And that gate is made from pieces of actually a salvage vault from the bank in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And we've restored that with an incredible metal maker in the area. So it literally, you have this incredible screen, an open air metal screen that just divides that space. Yeah. So from the bed to the bath, I mean, it's very romantic.
Yeah.
The other sort of, we have, of course, Lev described the artist, and those are the four maker studios. And then the other 7 rooms that are all located in the second building, which was actually an 1860s building that we completely had to rebuild.
Oh, so 4 rooms are in one building and 7. Okay, go ahead.
So as you know, and as you've noticed so far, is that the idea was, even though the hotel does not have a lot of rooms, there's a lot of public spaces. There's the restaurant and the cafe that's all day. There's the lounge and the library, of course, and the salon are the spaces for the guests. But I think the idea was that we have, there's a swimming pool, the only one on Warren Street, and a courtyard. So you want a lot of public spaces where people can really mingle. So not just the people who are the guests of the hotel, but people who are part of the community can use the maker as their own place to entertain and, to visit, to enjoy food or just to drink and meet friends. I think that part is really important about, this is what we all learned about the hotel life. It isn't just for hotel guests when you come somewhere.
And that philosophy about opening up the space to any kind of creative visionary or even any person, what made you choose Hudson, New York? Why not somewhere in Europe or Los Angeles, New York? What's special about the energy of this community that made you want to build here?
I mean, for the first time when I landed in Hudson, just taking a train from Penn Station in New York City, an hour and 50 minutes long, the ride along the Hudson River is so magical. It was so incredible. It's 3 stops and you're here.
Yeah.
So just like being a city person and have sort of like a desire to maybe get out of the city, not permanently, but to be somewhere else where I could sort of like break that pattern of that craziness that's going on, as much as I love it. It felt so good. It felt so accessible. And then also you immediately feel that there's something very special going on here. There is a history here.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like it's a best kept secret.
Yeah. Hudson, New York, and Catskills area in general is pretty magical. I mean, there's been some magical things that have happened here over the years.
Yeah.
But there is definitely an energy that feels very specific to Hudson.
Well, I was sort of blown away when I was walking on the streets for the first few blocks, and I was looking at the buildings, and I was like, oh my God, there's a Catskill Mountains in the background.
Yeah.
It feels like a city. It's like a little city.
Yeah.
It could be a piece of Brooklyn or anywhere in Manhattan, just in the setting of nature, but very eclectic. And you feel sort of like there's an artistic energy in the air. And particularly at the time when we were thinking about where to open the hotel, we did not want to do it in any big city. We wanted to do it somewhere where it could be more closer to a community that we could be part of.
And nature, was that important to you, to be close to nature?
Nature was important, but what's even more important was a community.
Okay.
A community that we can connect to, a community that can understand and enhance that to a certain
Lots of
degree.
artists here, lots of creatives.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there's a lot of artists, a lot of creatives, there's writers, there's, you name it. It's full of makers.
Yeah.
And as we always say, by the way, everybody's a maker.
Yes. What's that philosophy mean to both of you?
We talked about, I think specifically, it's a mindset. The mindset of a maker isn't necessarily results in, literally making something with your hands. I think that, anything that puts your mind into a creative process where you feel that you're going beyond sort of the required, beyond the operable directions, but to really open your mind and become curious to trying to create something beyond what is given. I think seeing more from everything that you get, I think, is what makes you a maker.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand it a bit more. What came into my head is even creating a conversation, you're making a pathway for someone to connect with you.
Something may come up out of it that will spark a curiosity that will make you want to create something else. I think that our professions aren't necessarily a description of our makers, but what is your favorite process? At what moment? What stimulates you? What is something that lets you go?
Beautiful.
I think we had this exercise, when we were starting the maker, and someone recommended you should sit down and write a personal statement. And this is the hardest thing we possibly could ever do, because, in one sentence to describe your true essence, is impossible.
So we have 4 out of the 6 fragrances in front of us. We're going to spray these in a minute, but I want to talk about the philosophy behind what it means that you are the maker. But Alina, tell us a little bit about some of these fragrances as well, both of those things together.
Well, to begin, our fragrances are gender inclusive. This is the way Lev creates them. This is the way they're living.
Beautiful.
I mean, they're clean and responsibly made. Their formulas are clean. They're vegan, cruelty-free, and the packaging, of course, it's responsibly approached. I think that the phrase about you are the maker around and how is it relate to wearing a fragrance stems very much into Lev's philosophy of how to create a scent.
Right.
That it doesn't come alive until you wear it. So you are the ultimate maker of the fragrance because it is you who brings it to the world. It is you that presents the story of it.
The fragrance, I'm just thinking about this now, amazing. The fragrance does not exist unless someone wears it. Wow.
No, it's going to be just a beautiful fragrance in the bottle.
In a bottle, yeah.
But you really bring it to life, as Alina said.
I think as a creator, it's probably really incredibly, incredibly exciting. And I've been in the room with Lev when we've encountered someone who would be wearing a fragrance that he created without even knowing this person. And there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the incredible sort of indication of someone's approval, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's do that now. I'm going to spray some for us. We're going to start with Libertine.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I'm wearing that today. Thank you.
So, Libertine is divine citrus.
I just want to capture my well, this is my I'm in heaven.
Well, there's a pomelo, which is the sort of like one of the main sort of like notes. There's a hibiscus flower in that, and there's cedarwood. And the reason why we're calling it divine citrus is because it's not your typical citrus, because citruses usually don't hold up very well on the skin, or at least we very quickly realizing that the smell is gone.
Yes,
because it's sharp in the beginning and then it quiets down. And what I did with the fragrance is that I anchored it with cedarwood. And what cedarwood does is that it keeps the citrus in place. So it's one of the few fragrances out there which are citrusy, but they also are staying for a long time on your skin. Beautiful. Because they really being grounded on the base with the cedarwood. And, I love that. And the hibiscus flower sort of like gives it like a beautiful transparency. And the story about the fragrance is really being liberated, feeling liberated in the moment. I mean, if we apply it to our travel fantasies, and if you're somewhere where you really want to leave the world behind and you just want to be in the moment. You want to be yourself. You really don't care what people thinking about you. Just want to do whatever you want to do.
Being free.
It's just being free and being liberated.
Yeah.
So something refreshing. Citrus really talked to me in terms of how I would start designing the composition of the fragrance. And the room that inspired me is one of our lofts, which is it's a terrace loft. It's sort of like it's a big room. It's a very big open space. It's like this huge day bed. You can be anywhere in the room, and throw pillows on the floor and lie down and then listen to the music. Be on this huge day bed and dreaming exactly and being outside. So it's really celebrating the moment of liberation. And being liberated and feeling free.
So that is Libertine, available at Scentbird. We're going to move on to Stag, I believe, now.
Now, this is Stag is one of our most popular fragrances. It's been amazing because we got the FIFI Awards, which is Fragrance Foundation. It's a big honor because we got the award as the number one fragrance within the indie group of fragrances.
Congratulations. Amazing.
It got voted as the best fragrance. It's almost getting like an Oscar of fragrances. I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely.
I think that
congratulations.
The industry recognized us for that. And it's we sort of like, it falls into the category of like warm woods.
Yes, definitely warm woods.
Palo Santo, you have agar wood, and you have leather. And it smells, I always say it smells expensive and confident. Very much inspired by the room that called The Architect.
Okay.
I always feel like this room, I don't know, I always refer to it as like James Bond. There's something about it that has like that confidence about everything inside this room. And I think when you're there, you sort of like, you get into this mindset, and it's really a description more about a nomad that roaming the world, and he always looks for things that are special. He loves to connect, or she, or they like to connect with people, and they always leave impression on anybody who they come in touch with, and the other people leave impression on them as well. And I wanted to celebrate that confidence through this fragrance and the richness of that. So every time when somebody actually smells it, they always use the word, it smells expensive, but it's very present, and it's very, very unique, and it's very, very different. So
for me, when we say confidence, to me, it's very sexy, actually. And, you know, to be sexy, you have to have an air of confidence about you. So definitely getting the wood, but very sensual, very rich, very sexy for me. Just very, very deep tones in there.
I think also the idea of being confident is being confident on your own, and that's the name Stag fits this so well because of that.
Yeah, but you have sort of like a little bit of a saltiness about it. There's something slightly peppery about it as well. It find it to be very, very sensual.
I love it.
I think the next fragrance we should do is Naked.
Please, yes.
I mean, we were just speaking about it, about the artist, but we call it the scent of a love affair.
It's a sensual musk. You have a beautiful white musk in it. You have passiflora, and and you have the orris root. I wanted it to be probably one of the most sensual fragrance out of all of them. It's all about the interaction between two people. Being sort of like intimately involved in this incredible room. And as I mentioned before, the artist is the room that was an inspiration for the story. And I saw it very early in the morning. You know, it's like the light just comes in through the window, and these two individuals, they are just absorbed in each other. They the sheets smellings of their body, and you even have a little bit of a sort of like a cotton smell to that, and some sweat note in it. There's a lot of pheromones in this fragrance.
100% agree. While the past one made me feel individually sexy. To me, this is two people being sexy and intimate together.
Yeah, for sure. It's a skin scent.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'm just going to also point out, I love that so far each of the three smell very different from each other.
They're very different.
And they give you very different emotions. And Lev, I couldn't agree with you more. This is about having a morning, afternoon, or night with someone, just you two together, experiencing each other's. Yeah.
It's like a second skin.
Beautiful.
So it's really translates so well on the skin.
Yeah.
I would say also this is one of the fragrances that is very adaptable. It's like a chameleon of fragrances because musk loves skin, and it's everybody interpret musks in a certain way, but it always works well.
Well, and to cap off our little exploration, we're going to do fire as we're sitting in the lounge in the place of the inspiration.
I'm feeling very fiery now after all these fragrances.
And fire is also awesome. It's like it's a sultry vanilla.
They're all so different.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But all very rich, very sensual.
Well, you have tobacco accord.
Okay. Yes, for sure.
That, you have juniper berry. And you also have Tahitian vanilla, which is very rich. It's not as sweet. It's almost rummy.
Yes.
Has like a thickness to that.
This is very thick. Like syrupy is the thing I'm thinking of in my brain.
Right. That part goes away very quickly because it's right on top. And it starts being grounded by sort of like the tobacco accord. That's in a dry down. It's really starts coming through. The juniper berry is right in the heart of the fragrance, and the juniper berry had to be. People like to drink gin. So
me too.
And I find that the gin note, the juniper berry, mixes so well with a lot of the woods and sort of like rummy type of notes, particularly vanilla, and it also describes sort of like the moment of intimacy between two people. They're in public, but everything melts away. They're just together.
They're in their own world.
They're in their own world.
Yeah.
They're very aware of each other, and they don't want this moment to go away. Sometimes when you spend certain moments with somebody and you in this great bar and there's something so sensual about it that there are still so many people around it, but there's only you two exist. The music in the background that's playing, I always imagine Billie Holiday and it's coming from afar. You're aware of all of it, but your main focus is the person that you sit next to, and you can smell them. You can smell their breath and
from drinking that gin and tonic.
And it's sort of like this quiet conversation and fire. It's sort of not only sitting in front of the fireplace, but you're putting each other on fire. From the way I designed the fragrances, I wanted to make sure that they are very mixable and they layerable one with each other. It's all of our 6 fragrances, they completely mixable. Because the collection was created that there's always sort of like that link from one to another, so it keeps on telling continuous story. They are very, very different, but they're all grounded by beautiful spices in the woods.
And complementary to each other. I will agree, they're all very different, but they complement. And I've actually have never done that before, which I'm going to do with the Maker Senses. I am going to start layering them in the morning, try a different one on the afternoon, do another in the evening, and see how that unfolds. Because they are very complementary. So beautiful that we get to experience all these scents. Well, 4 out of the 6. But I want to take a minute. This packaging, Alina, is very beautiful, and the bottles as well. This green sounds like it's the Maker green. Talk to us a little bit about the packaging for the fragrances.
Well, I think I would love to actually tell you a little bit about a glass because, we've developed this bottle. As you can feel, it's a very comfortable shape. It's inspired by actually an antique ink
fits right in my
bottles
hand
that,
this way. It's
that
very
fits
beautiful.
really well, but
Yes.
it's also textured glass. This fluting is something that we love. I mean, we have a lot of glassware that sort of follows that. We're creating the textured glass. It reflects light beautifully. It also protects the fragrance because it is not a completely clear glass. But we also worked with a manufacturer that is using less glass to create a bottle. So there's about almost 30% less of glass used. So it's really saving resources. It's very uncommon because if you take the cap off, the bottle feels quite light. It feels luxurious and beautiful, but it's not heavy. Because traditionally, a lot of fragrances are very, very heavy, but it doesn't require to have that much glass to have something beautiful. And then as you see this
attention to detail that you guys are putting into every aspect is so beautiful.
It's essential. And I think in order to recycle these bottles, this is a screw-on pump. And the cap is made from aluminum Zamac, so you can recycle it in your single stream. This was really important to us.
Beautiful.
And then, of course, the box actually has a flat embossing, so it feels like it's fluted.
Yeah.
And that was something that we wanted to portray, as well as, each fragrance has its own pattern. So on the inside of the box, you have a printing of different patterns to reflect the fragrance.
Beautiful, beautiful. Which reminds me of some
Delight
of the wallpaper.
and surprise.
Yes. We talk about full 360 immersive experience. This is
trying
happening
to bring
right
that surprise that everywhere at the maker where you lift a curtain or you turn around, there's something, another detail, and we wanted to really think of that through the whole process, even of creating the packaging.
Opening up this box to see the scent inside, I get a graphic that reminds me of the wallpaper in the hotel. It's beautiful.
Well, hopefully. Thank you.
Beautiful. Let's now talk about candles. We have candles too. I see we have 3 here. There's 6 altogether. Alina, tell us a little bit about these scents.
When we launched our Maker Fragrances collection, we launched our eau de parfums, 6 eau de parfums, and the candles. So currently there's 6 candles and 6 fragrances. And I think that the idea was to really bring an element of the environment, to people's homes. So to really take the scent of the maker, the feeling of the maker. And very early on, Lev has created a scent that actually we use here in the hotel that represents the public spaces. And that scent is called Spiritus. So this is, again, a candle is an object you bring home. So as you can see, there's a very subtle branding. The maker is just on the inside of the lid.
But we have the fluting again.
The fluting is, of course, continuing the bottles exactly. So a candle is a vessel that you bring home, and we wanted this to be something truly representative of the maker aesthetic that you can bring home and burn, and then ultimately upcycle into using as a keepsake, because it's very easy to upcycle candle vessels.
Well, candles are very, very important because this is how you sort of like create the atmosphere around you.
Yes. And we're talking about lighting. They also emit light.
They emit light, of course, and in all of our spaces in the evening, we always burn candles. This candle is made with, very sustainably. It's made with, it's a vegetable candle. It's made with soy wax, very high grade soy wax. And the burn, it's not always as easy to make fragrance to really come through the soy and waxes, like vegetable waxes. It took us a while to develop them, but we think they work beautifully and they burn
I agree. Thank you.
beautifully, evenly. As Alina described the fragrance. I don't know.
That's the gardener.
I'm smelling the gardener.
The gardener is all about being very green.
Yes.
In the way I've seen it as a green gardener. You have sort of like the basil, you have the lime in it, and
the mint.
The mint for sure.
The mint.
This is all green. This one.
It's everything green. Yeah. It's a green garden, and it's very fresh. When you burn this candle, it's all about freshness. Yeah. There's like a little nook of grass in the background as well.
Yeah.
I feel there's something very current about this candle. This type of a fragrance that is very, very unique and very, very different. But it brings nature into your home in a very sophisticated way.
Definitely.
And of course, it was inspired by the Gardener Studio. Yeah. Here, the life of the gardener, and somehow I saw it all being very green. And then this candle is
that's the artist.
That's the artist. And the artist candle, the way how I created the fragrance for the artist, because the artist world is very much all about color.
Yes.
So I saw the candle being fruity. all colors of fruit that are really been brought together to sort of like to create that more vibrant.
Definitely vibrant was the word I was just going to use.
It's a vibrant, but in a way, every time I was looking at the painting with the color in it, all I could think about fruity notes. That would be probably the best sort of compositions that could describe the artist candle at its best.
And the Spiritus, which is the scent of a maker, of the maker hotel, really.
But the Spiritus, it's about woods, spices, leather. You have frankincense in that. You have a beautiful sandalwood in it.
It smells a little smoky to me. Yeah,
it's have the smokiness to that.
Oh, it's so rich.
And I love the spice. The frankincense is so good. It's so rich, and when it burns, it has a little bit of an incensey feel to that, but it's still it's very rich.
Very rich. So I want to end our segment in talking about, Lev, if you had to describe Alina in a scent, and that can be as complex or simplistic as you'd like it to be, what would that be? And Alina, same question for you with Lev. If you had to describe him with notes or scents or feelings or emotions for scents, what would that be? Lev, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, it's confident, smart, outgoing, very sophisticated. This is what comes to my mind. Every time and Alina was a big muse to some of the fragrances that I was doing, particularly because I know not only what she likes, but I also think about her when I do that.
What a beautiful statement. He just called you a muse.
Yeah.
Well, and then as he's creating
yes, I had a few opportunities in my life where I had a bespoke fragrance that lasted a year and then it was launched on the market. But hey,
but I know when I do a certain fragrance, I know that Alina is definitely going to love that fragrance.
Wow,
because I feel statement. Because not only she wears it so well, it fits her personality, but those traits that I sort of described is very much in my mind when I create the fragrance.
It's a beautiful thing to be able to be seen by someone in that way, and then have them make something for you in mind.
To understanding. I mean, it is
to understand you. Yes,
and as I said, where that first fragrance that Lev had given me, and from then on, to understand what smells and recognize what someone will react to. Yeah. We have a fragrance in the maker that I love. We did not discuss it today, but it's called Wild, and it features my favorite flower, which is tuberose.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that I'm enjoying that benefits of that friendship and partnership for many years.
That's a good benefit.
And I have, witnessed the journeys of a lot of fragrances that have been launched and come about. I have witnessed some fragrances that Lev created that never were launched. But, to describe Lev in a fragrance sense, I think one is definitely warm, sultry woods with a mercurial top note, with a dynamic heart.
Oh, man, you guys are going to make me tear up over here.
Well, it's different, right? It's an interesting thing to ask about the scent. Is it a fragrance character question? Is it
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
thank God for smells, right?
Yeah. It's just a beautiful thing to have such a dynamic, close partnership relationship. And right away, Lev didn't even hesitate how he would describe you, and you were the same. Each other so well. That's the power of fragrance. I think it's like you could just know a human soul so deeply that you can just say it's this and this and this and this.
Yeah, it doesn't have to sometimes described by notes. It's described also by the character of the fragrance.
You said confident. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's what the fragrance exudes.
Yes,
and I think that and Alina liking the tuberose is the right flower to like because it's very confident.
Yeah.
Anybody who wears it is very confident.
But it also looks really subtle. I mean, it's a lush flower, but it's not voluptuous in any way.
Yeah.
It's like the most secretive thing where people see tuberose for the first time. The actual flower, it's not what you imagine.
Yeah.
I think things that are interesting are things that aren't obvious, right?
Yes, the mystery is the interesting part. Yeah,
What the Encarnacion happens to those beautiful things.
Yes, high five over there. Well, it's been an amazing pleasure to speak to both of you. My soul and my heart is enriched truly by meeting you today. It's been a wonderful experience to get to talk to you.
Thank you. It means a lot, and very flattered and really warmed by getting to know you today as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lev.
Appreciate it very much, Benny.
Thanks. Cool.